when it's quite live. But I think it's live now. Welcome everyone to episode 17 of Growth Talk. Sorry everyone, it's been a while. It's been 5-6 months, something like that. But today we have Julien, who is audio FINI, sleep, consume, blast, play. Julien, welcome to the show.
Hey man, thanks for having me here. It's a real pledge.
Yeah, great to have you. Finally have a lead FI. I know there's some people that have been asking for that, and so we finally
Has there
captured
never
it.
been an FI on the show up until now?
Nope.
Is it,
Well, there's
oh
been
wow.
like FI second, but never first.
Yeah. True story.
Yeah. So yeah, you are the first one.
Nice.
So yeah, let's get it started off with your type. Do you have this is a bit of a hard question to answer, I think. Do you have kind of an archetype in mind for your type, or like what would you look for if you were looking for another Julien out there? Like what would be some of the trademarks of that type, would you say?
Oh, interesting question, man. Yeah, because I feel like I've met a few people that are quite like myself,
Mm-hmm.
and I would say some of the trademarks are generally kind of surprising in a way, like kind of easygoing, amicable, kind of smooth to get along with, but kind of
Mm-hmm.
hard to get to know. Like it might take a while to get to know this character, but whenever you see them or talk to them, it's always kind of like, wow, this is really like this is easy going, like there's nothing abrasive about this type of character in the wild. And then when you
Mm-hmm.
get to know them, you probably find that they have some kind of creative interest. They're interested in sort of creative endeavors, and they're always down to talk about philosophy or some kind of metaphysical topic. And they're probably also really hung up on their own identity, in contrast to expectations in the tribe. And a lot of the conversations will have to do with our identity. Like,
Sure.
even though it might like we can mask that or whatever in certain ways, but that'll always be sort of the thread. And I don't know if the expectation is an archetype like a figure. I can't really think of that, but that's the best way that I can describe the sort of features of my
Yeah,
type.
that's a good description. I think it's one thing that I think especially hit home was the easy to get along with, but kind of hard to get to know. And I've definitely kind of felt that from lead FIs as well. Where do you think that comes from, or why do people usually feel that way? Do you think?
I think it's because the values are very personal, and so when you get to know a lead FI, you're trying to get to know their identity, which is rooted in the FI and what they like and what they care about. And a lot of the time, it's very personal and sensitive, and so they'll be, I think, kind of on guard or less. How can I word this? Like they won't be as ready to supply those FI values, and they'll be reserved until they feel safe or they can feel like comfortable expressing that to someone. And usually it's with somebody who shares the same kind of FI, like you get a sense like, oh, this person has this similar value in this section, and then you can expand on that, like, oh, this person likes music, I like music, that's cool. And then you find out, or like you go a little bit further and you're like, oh, this person is in a similar situation as me in life, and that's great. And then we can share that as well. And you just go on and on until you can get a clear picture of the person. But it's just like, I guess it's kind of building blocks. You're sort of building off of one FI to another FI and trying to see if there's a connection there, or if you can comfortably share that without it being stepped on. Because that's one of the greatest fears, I think, for the FI, is that they express something that they value or that they care about, and it gets rejected by the tribe, or it gets snubbed or somehow. And the fear is not only because it lessens their own value, but that it also means that that person is going to be a conflict. There's going to be a conflict with somebody as well. I mean, that's how I feel about it personally. Like, I'm always trying to avoid conflicts, and sometimes that makes matters so much worse. Sometimes you really need to just have a conflict, and it makes things easier on the front end and the back end, rather than avoiding the conflict and then it erupts out of your control.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, trying to, especially like for IPs, the whole conflict thing. Like we usually try to ninja our way out of that, don't we?
Yeah, right. It's just like, is it like a heightened discomfort of it or something? Or I don't know, man, but I feel that.
This feels very serious, right? It feels like it's
True. Yeah.
like it's something potentially very damaging. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. That makes
Before
sense.
I
That makes a
go
lot of
on,
sense.
anyone that's listening, how is our mic volumes relative to one another? Are we both about the same, or does one of us need to turn our mic down? If someone could answer that, that would be great. Fortunately, we don't have a way to see the levels on both of us, which would be great. But
True. Yeah, that could.
maybe
Is that a feature in in the pro version? I don't think so though, huh? They just don't have the audio levels.
okay. So Cosmic said it's good, so we should be good. Okay, great.
Are you seeing this on YouTube or what? Like, I'm not seeing this.
Yeah, it should be in YouTube under my channel.
Oh,
I can give you
comments.
the.
Oh wait, I can just go to the comments tab. Right.
Oh, you mean in Streamer? Yeah. There should be like on the right side, like a little comments thing flooding in.
Nice.
You'll be able to see
Sick.
that. Yeah. Right. So yeah, that kind of leads to the question: what is your FI being stepped on sort of look like? Like what do you interpret as it being stepped on? Is it like outright like you put out something that you like and they're like, no, that sucks, or something like that? Or is it more subtle than that? Or
Can be subtle. I can give you an example.
yeah, right.
It was a few years ago, right? And just to give some background, I have this Indian guru or whatever
Mm-hmm.
that I went to see when I went to India, and I subscribe to his philosophy quite a bit. Babe, can you turn it down a bit? Sorry, I'm just asking. The
All
TV's
good.
pretty loud. I subscribe to this Indian guru, and I went to India to see him, and I subscribe to his philosophy, which is Advaita Vedanta. And it's not
Mm-hmm.
necessarily like, like I'm super into this character or whatever. I like what he stands for. I like the philosophy that he seems to demonstrate the best. And so
Okay.
I went to my brother's place at the time, and he's aware of this guru or whatever. And so you can say that this character and this philosophy is in my FI box, right? It's important to me. It's
Mm-hmm.
part of my identity. And at one point in our conversation, my brother just said how he thought that this guru was like evil, and he watched a video saying like this Christian guy was saying that like he's demon possessed or something, and like you can see it in his eyes. And this isn't a conversation where you're like debating a philosophy or like there's room for conversation. It's a conversation in which there's a belief being projected against another belief, and neither are really ready to accept the other person's belief. And so
Yeah.
I think that I didn't explode at the time, but internally I was exploding.
Yeah.
And I just felt like completely um, just insulted in a way,
Yeah.
to hear that coming from him. And I think that's an example of having the FI stepped on. And
Okay.
I think
Yeah.
that it can
Yeah.
manifest in different
Mhm.
ways. Sometimes you can feel depressed, but for me, it's always been anger. I've always been drawn to anger as an emotional response. And I think that's probably unique for different people, how they
Sure.
emotionally process that.
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to that quite a bit. Definitely there's something that like I'm super into. It could be even OP or something like that. And then somebody is like criticizing it kind of unprompted. Like we're not even really in that mode of discussion. And they're just like, well,
Yeah,
this is
exactly.
blah, blah,
You
or,
know,
whatever. I guess if they have like reasonable criticisms, like I guess I'm the one defining reasonable, which is a bit IP like, but then I guess it's not so bad, but I guess it's mostly when somebody's not really informed about the subject and then they start talking about it and kind of, like shitting on it basically, and when they really haven't really looked into it much. And I feel like that is really insulting in a TI way, because it's almost like, oh, I can just kind of broadly look at this thing and I can better assess it than you can. You know what I mean? How dare you?
Interesting, man. Interesting. I feel like the
Yeah.
FI flavor of that is more like they are disrespecting your own experience, like my own experience.
Yeah.
It's like an experience that has added value to my life, and they're
Mhm.
saying no, it hasn't. And I'm like, how can you say that this experience hasn't added value to my life? Like I'm the one experiencing it. Like it's impossible to say
Yeah.
that. But I get what you're saying, man. It's like a flavor. There's a flavor to like a constructive conversation or an exploratory conversation where people are trying to understand, but also seeing points that they can criticize about the topic. And then there's the conversation in which it's just outright dismissal and outright just negativity and deconstruction. Like there's just a destructive quality to it, and that gets me too, man, for sure.
Yeah, and like you, I definitely feel prone to anger in those moments. I usually don't like. The anger usually doesn't come out, because I feel like that. For me, I don't like just allow myself to do that necessarily, but I'll definitely stew over it for a while. Sometimes way longer than you would expect. In some situations.
Me too, man, for sure. I think that's the IP situation coming out, and I don't know how you stew over it, but for me, it's always very personal, like him and I stewing, in which I'm like, I can't believe that person did that, or like said that, like this person, this is the target that my anger is latching onto, and that's like, how am I not getting over this, like for so long?
Like it just stays in there, right? It just stays there, like bouncing off the walls in your head somehow, and you're like expecting it to slow down at some point and kind of settle, but you're just like, okay, it's still there.
Yeah, even logically, you can be like, this should be gone by now, but it's just not, right?
Right? Yeah, and it kind of just eats at you, right? Like, I feel like for me, I'm not very good at doing this, but a lot of times if I just let myself kind of be a dick back to the person, that usually resolves the conflict inside of myself.
Interesting.
Which doesn't feel like a healthy habit, but it sure does feel better afterwards.
I like that. I feel like when I've done that, I usually end up either exactly how you described it, like feeling like resolved, or regretting it because I've misinterpreted something. Like I've overreacted at this point, and now it's almost like, oh wow, like I went way too far with that, and now I feel bad. But it's weird because a lot of times I would rather be the one feeling bad than having the other person. Like I would rather feel like the bad guy than have the other person be the bad guy in my life. You know what I mean?
Okay. I had to think about that for a second. Okay, so you'd rather like the bad guy than. I don't know which one I think I prefer them to be the bad guy.
I get it. I probably can't say that with absolute certainty, but it kind of, to me, boils down to maybe control, feeling like I'm the one who now has control of what I do with that. It's kind of like, I have ownership of the fact that I'm the bad guy now, and now it's up to me to transform this and to resolve it. And it feels like if I put that onto someone else, then it's the ball's in their court, and I'm waiting for them to resolve it, and that might never come. And then I'm left stewing in this situation where it's like, is this ever going to resolve or not? I use a very blanket statement that doesn't work as a blanket statement, because I'm sure that not every example will work like this. Like I wouldn't want to feel like the bad guy. Like I would rather be the guy who gets shot than shoot somebody and kill them.
Sure.
Like,
that
would feel so much worse, but just in kind of pedestrian situations and arguments,
Yeah, in that context for sure. Yeah, I know what you mean. But that makes a lot of sense, because you can be in control of it and be responsible for it. I guess like I don't feel like I have the ability to deal with it myself, and maybe that's why I feel like I don't want to be the bad guy in this one.
Right. Interesting. Because I feel like usually just an apology is all that needs to happen. Totally. For me at least. Yeah. And I mean, yeah.
Oh yeah. Sometimes I'll be super, super angry at somebody, like unbelievably angry. And then they don't even necessarily apologize. They just say, hey, how's it going? And that's it. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm fine now, actually.
I feel the same way, man. Yeah. Mostly like if I've invented something, like if it's like banter, but I'm thinking that they're serious about something that they've said, like it's an insult or something, but it's just banter. And I'm stewing on that. But then they're just like, hey, how you going anyways, man? And I'm like, oh, well, never mind. That was just, we're just jokes.
Sweet. Yeah. And then, sometimes you like feel a bit silly that you were like,
definitely
about that.
Yeah. Like, shit. Yeah. Honestly, man.
Totally.
Wow.
So that's interesting. There's I guess a lot more in common the lead TI and lead FI would have in common than I would have thought, especially when it comes to.
I've seen that a lot, actually, man. I think that TI and FI are so much more common than people would think. I'm actually finding it difficult to see the real difference between TI and FI a lot of the time.
Mhm.
other than the fact that the TI seems to be a lot more organized with their logical decision making than FI is.
Mhm.
And the FI just seems to be more aware, I think, of their own emotional range, which is an odd thing to say because, like, I can't even say that TIs are less understanding of their values because I've met so many TIs that know what they value, they know what they like about. I hardly know what I like about, you know? Like, I see a comment here from Cosmic Death asking what I'm most passionate about in life and why. I have no answer for that, man.
Yeah,
I'm
me neither.
passionate about just living, I guess, just exploring, just for what, just I don't know, man, because it changes so much. There was a time when I was passionate about music. There was a time I was passionate about video games. There was a time I was passionate about martial arts, weightlifting, and like the seasons, they change, and I'm no longer passionate about them. And I've gone through the cycle so many times that right now I'm like, I don't even know. Like right now, I'm passionate about chess, and I'm passionate about learning. I think learning is the one common underlying
Yeah.
theme about everything. Is like I'm passionate about improving and learning. There, figured it out. That's it.
Yeah, that's funny that you said that because I was just thinking, it's like, okay, there has to be a common thread, right? Because there is something fundamentally that's we're being passionate about. It's just expressing itself in different ways,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
martial arts or music or whatever. But yeah, it is
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
that, right? And I think it's the same for TIs a lot, where you're kind of like
Mm-hmm.
you're building yourself, and you're following your what you feel like is supposed to be good for you in some way or another,
Mm-hmm.
or like, you know what I mean? And a lot of times it is learning new things or exploring new things, and yeah, it seems like that's
Yeah, I get that, man. I mean, I don't know what's going on in this life, dude, but we're here, we're living it, we're doing
yeah.
what we can, trying to figure it out.
Yeah, trying to be happy, and yeah,
Yeah,
trying to
exactly.
enjoy the life, the short life that we do have, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man.
Can I ask you a weird question?
Sure, man.
We on the show, I was about to say we asked this question, like there's more than one person that asked it,
Wow,
but
the royal we.
yeah, and me and my ego both asked this question. Um, but actually, Rose came up with it. I think she's like the second person on the show.
Oh, cool.
What would you say the spirit animal is of your last function? If an animal could represent the demon TE, what would you say that is? Kind of
So,
a
like,
hard
we're
one to
thinking,
come up with unscripted,
so we're
but
conceptualizing this as a demon, as like, I'm just wondering, like, how much of the package are we including here? Are we like considering my entire type leading to this last function, or just like play in general for this type of thing?
just the TE. So how do you see your TE in animal form?
Uh,
Yeah.
in animal form. Okay. So I guess I'd have to think about it as like something that wants to help a lot, but also
Mhm.
overlooks helping a lot, and kind of just spaces out in that whole thing. Kind of just like, but I don't know how many animals really are all that helpful in general, you know? Because I think
Hmm.
that's what TE is trying to do. They're trying to very much help. And I think that I'd have to have a like off the top of my head, I'm thinking of like small animals like otters or like some kind of like rodent type animal. I don't know why, but that's just what's coming to my mind. Like, but even otters, I think, are a bit too playful. So maybe like a porcupine. Yeah, we'll go with porcupine.
A
That's
porcupine. Okay.
yeah.
Wait, I think somebody else said porcupine too. What function was that for? Um, or maybe I'm forgetting. Man, I used to have them all written down, but I don't know where that went. But some really like interesting answers for that. Okay, so porcupine wants to help, but yeah, might be is a little
I don't
over.
even think porcupines are trying to help, man. I was going down that thread of thought, and I just thought, man, that doesn't really apply to animals. Like I can't even think about what
Yeah.
animals are.
Yeah, you think about animals are
Maybe
not
like
the most
ants.
helpful, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, not really, but
I guess an ant is
insects
very
maybe.
TE though, isn't it? Like it's not like
An
very
ant
ants have
seems
like an FI going on. It's just like they're part
no,
of the
they're
hive,
very
right?
industrious. Yeah, exactly.
Like a bee or
Just
something. That would be pretty
yeah.
TE, like I think. Yeah.
That's an interesting analogy. I feel like with a lot of insects you could have, like if there is a queen figure, that almost represents the DI or FI of the situation, and then all the rest of the hive is like the DE situation. But then I have to
That's true,
wonder, like,
actually.
what are they trying to do? Like, are ants and bees, are they just trying to like live and procreate? Like, I imagine a biologist would have a way better understanding of what's going on. But is it really that simple? Like, Queen's just like, we're got to live, everybody. It's like, help me
We're
live.
gonna live as much as we can, and we're gonna
Yeah,
make as many
exactly.
little ones of us to pass it on. But yeah, there's no ultimate goal. I mean, are they trying to take over the world? Probably not. They probably can't even conceptualize that.
Probably
their
not,
ants
but I'd
would
be pretty
doing it,
freaked
right?
out, you know, if
'Cause
that's what they're
they
in
have
the
some
woods.
like very simple function they have to carry out, and they don't really look much past that. And yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
But
Have you
whatever
ever
that
seen the
function
ants?
somehow. Yeah, sorry, go
Sorry,
ahead.
man. Have you ever seen the ants just going in circles? Like they just have like a pattern. Like there's just like a ton of them, and they're just like walking in circles in a spiral or something on the
Yeah,
ground. Super weird, man. Like what is that?
okay,
Is that just
yeah,
like a malfunction or
it's
like?
a bug in their programming, man. It's an
Yeah.
infinite loop.
Yeah.
Yeah, nature
Gotta get
hasn't
out of
worked
it.
that one out yet, I think, so they're
Nah,
just
no.
going around in circles
Yeah.
for who knows how long.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's basically what it is, right? So evolution just at some point came up with something that was able to sustain itself, and it just stays that way until it's able to sustain itself even more, and then eventually it's conscious, and it's like, wait, what the hell are we doing? And then you have humans, and now we're all confused and don't really know what we're supposed
Yeah,
to
we're
do.
all very like okay, now we're conscious, but now I'm way more confused than ever before. Like what?
Yeah,
What is all
exactly.
this?
This was supposed to help.
Yeah, man. I was gonna. Oh, what was I? Never mind. Lost it. I was thinking about something. It's gone.
So my favorite spirit animal so far was actually Rose's spirit animal, which was a raccoon for her. She's
Oh,
Innie. So her and she's
true.
also
Trash
last.
bandit. Trash
So the
bandit.
raccoon is like going through stuff, getting into
Just
trouble,
chaos.
and exploring. And I was like, no, that's such a good animal for that. Actually,
That's great. I love how many comics are out there about raccoons, man. Funniest
yeah,
stuff.
they're a funny animal for sure. A lot of
Yeah. What
personality.
about yours, Dave? Have you thought about your demon FE? What the
So I
spirit
came up
animal
with
is?
it on the spot on the show, but I probably could come up with a better one. But I came up with a rabbit, just because how
Rabbit.
like sweet and non-assuming and everything and skittish that the rabbit is. Because like when lead TIs try to do their FE, they're kind of like, you know what I mean? So like the
Interesting.
rabbit kind of fit it a little
I
bit.
feel
I
like
don't know.
the porcupine I chose is along that kind of thread, you know, very
Mhm.
skittish, very kind of scared, trying to hide, very much so more of like a prey than a predator, and like just
Yeah,
trying their best, but kind of fragile in a way.
totally. Yeah,
Interesting.
that's how the rabbit feels as well. It's not like a powerful animal, right? It's one that's like, I hope I don't get
Yeah,
eaten by
yeah.
something,
But they're
Yeah,
so cute,
yeah.
man. So
They
damn
are
cute.
totally, very much so. So and this is not really just really connected to what we were just talking about, but kind
Perfect.
of in the lines of with what we're talking. I say we again. Why do I keep saying we? What
Well, I'm here
is talked
listening.
about in the yeah we. There you go. Okay, you're also the host. But what's talked about in the show is kind of like the soft goal of the show is to kind of see the timeline of somebody's life and kind of how their functions and their personality develop and kind of the roadblocks that were in the way and all that stuff and try to somehow relate that to OP if possible. So
Yeah, yeah.
with that said, how were you when you were young? Do you feel like you were pretty prominent FI, or were those things that molded over time, or what
Oh
was
man, the
the
NI
young?
not at all. I think the NI
I don't
is
know.
something that gained strength later on in life.
Okay.
I can almost pinpoint the moment that it became more prominent, but before then, man, I think it was all like interestingly enough, like when I was a really young kid, I was always kind of like a leaderish type of person. Like I would
Okay.
kind of gather friends around me and feel like I was the king of the group or whatever, which I guess is a
Hmm.
very FI kind of way to think of yourself. Like you're thinking you're the top person. And that obviously diminishes as you get older. You kind of realize once you
You
start
learn.
seeing the spectrum, when you start seeing TE and SE and all that, you're like, oh, wow, man, like I'm actually
Yeah.
like kind of whack. Like, what's going on here?
Hmm.
And very immature. And I kind of want to change, like, tackle this answer from a different perspective because
Okay.
I was thinking about this the other day how at this point in my life, maybe it's because I'm a double observer, I feel so much more comfortable with chaotic situations happening in my life and they're almost just rolling off of me right now. And I
Hmm.
think back to being a kid and these situations troubled me a lot. Like almost just as much as the single decider issues of people troubled me as well. Like everything
Hmm.
troubled me. It's like I was not chill in any way. Like maybe I was a quiet kid, but I was just bothered by everything, you know, like anything could upset me for forever. And
Hmm.
I think as I get older and I grow, um, I first off became more comfortable with just the chaos of the observer functions, you know, like random crap could happen, and I'm like, oh, like whatever. Like it takes me a couple seconds or like a minute or whatever to be like, all right, like we'll just figure this out. We'll adjust to this or whatever. And it's more of the decision making things and the people processing that's taking longer to come to terms with. But even now, it is slowly, very slowly getting better, especially after discovering objective personality, in which I would not even consider, like before, I would just consider that I was having negative thoughts because I had a spiritual background. If I was stuck on a thought about a person, I would just consider that a stuck thought, you know, and I would just try to get through the thought by allowing it and sitting with it and seeing it go on its own. But after objective personality, you can kind of see that there's a flavor to the thought, and the flavor of the thought is single decider. It's a people issue, me and that person, and or like a decision. You know, like I'm stuck on making this decision. I have no idea how to make this decision. And I think realizing that over the last few years that I've been in the community, like 3 years or whatever, you can kind of come up with tools that, like, you might not feel comfortable with it ever, but I try to pretend that I am in a situation, like try to remind myself, like, this is a single decider situation right here. Like the reason why I'm so upset and I'm so stuck on this right now in my emotions is because of the single decider aspect. And I need to remind myself that this probably isn't the case. Like I'm probably not seeing all of reality here. And I try to do the double deciding of like, how are they feeling? Like what's going through their mind? Like what's their experience right now in life, you know, like maybe they're struggling in some way and I'm just not aware of that. And that's not how I feel automatically. I don't automatically think that way or feel that way, but I have to activate that with the knowledge. Yeah. Right. And that helps, even if it's not an instinct, even if it's not automatic, it does help to have that thought held up and explore it as well. And it might only help a tiny bit with processing emotions, but it feels like it is an improvement because you're still upset, but you're not necessarily upset at the person. You're more just generally upset and you're trying to work through it, I guess. And I think that's been the main growth, if I can relate it to my type and objective personality, is just trying to find balance in both the observers and the deciding functions. And the observing came more naturally, maybe just through how I lived and what I did. And then the deciding is very unnatural, but we have tools after we explore typology that can help us kind of activate it in a sort of phony way, like fake it till you make it type of deal, right?
Or at least acknowledge that needs to happen, right? Like without OP, how do you know that you're not doing the TE necessarily, right? It's kind of
exactly. I remember when I first got my type back, I would just try to find things to do around the house. Like I was living with my one homie roommate, and I would just look around the house for 30 minutes and be like, what can I do to help the house, you know, to help the general house, instead of just being in my room in my own little box exploring how can I improve myself, how can I better myself, how can I do a little something for the greater tribe, which happened to be my roommate, you know, in the house. And so I would do a little bit of cleaning here and there, like I would do a little bit of vacuuming or dusting or whatever, just little general things like that. That is not the highest form of TE, but it's a little bit stepping outside of yourself, right? And I think that has helped just in the journey in general. And then at work as well, thinking less about myself and more about how can I, you know, think about other people and their experience and how can I help people around me rather than just focusing in on myself and my own needs.
Sure. Yeah. Can relate to a lot of that, especially the part about like, we don't all start off as double observers, do we? Like, I feel like you kind of fold it.
Like where nothing, like, you start off. Oh man.
Yeah, you got to go through the ringer for that, right? But yeah, it kind of sounded a little bit like you were framing it in like things would happen to you, and these things were hard to deal with, and you didn't really know what was coming, right? So it was kind of my mind tried to put that in the SE box. I don't know if that's necessarily like fear of the SE so much, but for me it was very similar. But for me it was always like I would just come to really strange and often frightening conclusions about stuff that didn't really make like necessarily a lot of sense.
Oh really?
You know what I mean? Like conspiracy type thinking, or thinking, oh, this happened 3 times today, that means I'm gonna get cancer or something like that. Just really weird stuff. And I'm wondering if that's like maybe that's like the demon and I flavor of that. I don't know. Is that relatable at all, or is it more like it is kind of like a chaos thing that you're worried about, or is that kind of weird thinking for you as well when you're young?
I don't know, man. I mean, to a degree, I think that I've explored what you're exploring there, but I don't think I've ever been caught off guard by the intuition or the conspiracy abstract things as much as other
Okay.
people. Like a lot of my brothers are into that kind of thing, and it catches them off guard. And whenever I would converse with them, I'd be like, that doesn't really add up. Like you can kind of explore and see that this doesn't really add up. But at the same time, I remember when I was first learning to play the guitar, I really wanted to play, but I didn't have a lot of discipline. Like I couldn't just focus in and learn. And so I wrote down a vow, which was kind of a curse to myself. And I wrote down like, I will practice every day for the next 3 months or else something really bad will happen to me. And I believed in that enough to stick to it and be disciplined. You know, I had enough of the belief in these abstract, unknown bad things that could happen, like cursing myself or you know, karma and things like that. That I would do that. And I think I can get what you're saying though. Like when you're like these 3 things happened to me and like something bad is. I feel like I had that in a positive respect. Like I would see a number. Like I was really into Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and so like whenever I saw the number 42 or my brother saw it, we'd be like, oh, we're on the right path. Like we're going in the right direction. Like this is what we're supposed to be doing right now. And it had a very like positive flavor to it in that sense. But negative times as well, for sure.
Interesting. So it's almost like, at least in that case, there was a positive case to that intuition, or like when you did see that certain thing happening, it wasn't representing something negative. I had a thing with numbers as well. Like I had it to where it's a bit hard to remember, but I think I like counted how many letters there are in my first name and my last name.
Oh yeah.
And I tried to see what other people had those same like numbers of letters in their names, and I found it was mostly people that were bad, in my opinion. Bad. I don't know what bad means. And all the cool people had different numbers of letters. So that must mean I'm bad. Oh shit. That was a big thing for a while.
That's almost a good excuse though to start getting better or whatever. You're like, oh man, I'm bad. Like I better like shape up because it's like, you know, my numbers aren't good right here. I gotta
my numbers aren't good, man. Oh man, 5 and 7. Oh, that sucks.
Oh man.
Oh man. So, did you feel like the demon TE was like kind of biting you in the ass? Did you recognize that when you were younger? Like, did you feel like there was a separation from the tribe, or did you feel like there were points when you just weren't helpful, or felt like you were different than anyone, or like where did you see that kind of demon TE flare up? Do you think? What was some common things, or did you even like really notice that when you were young?
I don't think I even noticed it when I was young, man. To be perfectly honest, I don't know. It's odd because even in my household, like whenever my dad was doing like a renovation project or needed help with something, he would come to me because I would be the most amicable and the most readily available to say, yeah, I'll help out with that. But I would never be the one to jump out of my seat to do that. Or sometimes I would be, which kind of goes against the natural demon TE idea of that. And I think that what it boiled down to mostly was just being completely unaware of what other people were going through and what other people were experiencing and what their lives were about, you know, and just being really insensitive in a way. At times, not all the time, but like with my twin brother, I have a twin brother, and I think that I was really insensitive to him for a long time. And when I became more conscious as I grew older, I really regretted that for a long time, the way that I interacted and treated him without any kind of regard for his own self. And I felt bad about that. And even to this day, you know, I don't stop to think enough about what other people are going through and what they need help with, unless it's right in front of me. You know, it's hard to ignore something that's right in front of you, and like keeping in contact with friends, like it's something that I want to get better at, but there's always an excuse not to, you know, there's always like, oh, I got to work on this thing right now, or I got to do this thing today. And like, I just don't have the energy or the emotional availability or the time, and I just can't, you know. And like, it's always a desire, but it doesn't come to life. And I rely on other people to reach out to me more so, which, you know, has made it kind of, I made a lot of friendships kind of fall away. Like they're not gone. I can always message some friends that I had in the past, and we're always keen to keep in touch because it was good. The friendship was good. There's never any bad times. So I mean, you can always reach out to somebody and spark that up again. But I just really don't spend that much time doing that. Especially like I started seeing this girl 2 years ago. We've been dating for this whole time, and now she's like the center of my tribe, and so like she's like the main focus of my attention rather than other people like friends and whatnot that I still will try to give some time to, but it's not as much as before. And I think that my struggle is just with the TE is balancing other people in contrast to myself. Like I got this 90-10 ratio in which 90% of my time is put to myself, 10% of my time is put to the people really close to me, and then I just don't have enough. I don't have enough for all the other people who need it or deserve it.
Yeah, I feel you for sure. It almost just sounds like not even necessarily like a TE thing, or just like a DE thing.
Yeah,
kind of
right.
Yeah, that's been really hard for me as well, just keeping up with people and prioritizing, keeping things up. Because like what you said, sometimes you're just like, oh man, I don't really have the energy right now to do this, or I can do it later. Or, I don't really want to get sucked into a conversation now, even though like you want to keep up with them and you want to be a part of their life, but at the same time you're like, no, it's not the most convenient time at the moment. And then your friendships kind of weaken over time. But like what you said, like especially if it's like someone you were pretty close to, you can always kind of reignite those
Yeah,
friendships.
I was shocked, man. Like I hadn't talked to this guy in 9 years, and I just messaged him a few months ago, and it was like nothing had happened. He was just like hyped to hear from me. I was hyped to hear from him, and had a nice conversation. And I haven't talked to him since then, but it's a nice reminder to know that you can reach out to these people.
Totally.
But it's funny as you say that you experience the same thing, because it seems like the DE, whether it's TE flavor, FE flavor, it's so similar. Like the IPs are going through so much of the same thing. And like maybe the difference is that how my thought process works. Like maybe I just like a sloppier thought process that is trying to go quicker than your thought process, and maybe I honestly I don't understand FE very much, but I imagine it's similar, just in an emotional value type of spectrum as well.
Yeah. It seems a lot more similar than I would think. Even like some of the more even specific examples you mentioned about how you're affecting others emotionally is apparently is a thing for you as well, which reads is very demon FE, right? But apparently it's not necessarily an FE or a TE thing, just in general. It's like
well, it's a funny thing, because like I guess that just fits into the whole box of what DE is. It's other people's feelings and also what works for other people. And on a one-to-one though, like I can sit with emotions very well. Like I have no problem sitting with dark emotions and positive emotions. Like I can be there for somebody who's experiencing dark, heavy emotional times, because I feel like my own emotional experience is very secure, very solid, and masculine and immovable. So I can be there for somebody who's experiencing a lot of darkness. And I think in that way I can better empathize and sympathize with people's experiences, because I can stare right at it and I don't have to look away, and but in the general gist of it, for people that are outside of my immediate focus, it's like I got blinders on for DE, whether that's FE or TE, and I'm only focusing on this. And if it's like right in front of me, then it's just like, oh yeah, I'm better at using emotions than logic. Like if somebody needs help with something, they're trying to figure something out. Like I got friends with all those INTJs, Josh and Austin, and it's so funny talking to them, because like you come up with even like the hint of a problem. Like you're talking about even the hint, the ghost of a problem, and they're all on top of that. They're like, I got 10 different tools that will help you right here. Like let's do this. Like let's get it done. And you're like, I wasn't even looking for that, but that's awesome, man. Cool. And like that is not part of my experience at all. I'm like, I got no tools for nobody. Like I wish I did, I should, but I don't.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. Whereas like for the TI flavor of it, it's like you have a tool because the one you've used for yourself, but you're like, it's like, am I being like, am I stepping on them by being like, oh, here's how you solve it? Where you're really like, you're like, well, I don't want to assume that they can't solve it themselves, so I'm gonna reserve and hold it back unless they specifically ask for it. And even then, I'm gonna be kind of like, a bit pulled back on suggesting it a little bit because it's almost like as a TI, you play this weird game of like, oh, I don't want to insult your intelligence by saying here's the way you should do it. You know what I mean? Which people that are TE are like, no, you're not insulting my intelligence at all. No, just give me whatever you got, and I'll see
just give me the
how
tool,
it compares
man.
on the spectrum, and
Let's see how it works.
Whatever.
I must say though that during like work, if I work with somebody who's TI, I usually love their tools. Like whatever, like
okay.
I'll be watching what they're doing, and I'm like, oh, that's great, man. Like I'm using that. Like I'm picking that up. That's in my toolbox now. Like
Nice.
let's get it. But I've also seen how it can be almost insulting. Like I had this one coworker who was obviously TI, and he was doing this thing that worked, but it was kind of dumb. It was kind of silly, but it worked, you know. Like
don't tell them that.
I would never say that. I would never, you know. I was full on board. I'm like, you rule, dude. That's awesome.
Yeah.
But he was like, he had like these ropes or like this cloth or whatever, and he was lowering a basket from like the second floor that he could just walk down the stairs, but he decided to do it like this to preserve energy or whatever. And our operations manager, it was cool. I liked it. But the operations manager came by and he's like, "What are you doing? Like this is so childish." And like you could see, like just like he was insulted, man. Like he was not at all happy about it. He was choked that this guy said that, and I understand it because I'm like, that's personal, man. You can't just tell him that idea was dumb or childish.
Yeah,
like
because you're not saying the idea was dumb. You're saying he's dumb. That's at least according to him. That's because it's like he had to come up with that on his own, and that's like after puzzling and doing all the shit. And if he comes up with something dumb, what does that mean about his internal process, right? So that's kind of like where the insult comes from, you know what I mean? But it's kind of silly because I mean we're like, you know, we're all gonna come up with stuff that's not perfect or it's not amazing and doesn't necessarily reflect on you. But yeah, that's like our version of having our FI trample. It's like this thing you've been spending a ridiculous amount of time on, ignoring everyone, probably for years, sucks.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean?
I feel that, man. I feel that with the FI. Oh.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so that's what it looks like. Was there any like pivotal moments you feel like in your life with when maybe outside of OP where you kind of were like, damn, I really am not paying attention to people like I should, or not, I'm not as helpful, or whatever the TE flavor of it is. Do you feel like is there any time where it just could really hit you in the face?
Man, I'm trying to think about it, but I can't really. I mean, yeah. I mean, there was a time where it slapped me in the face, but it doesn't happen often. And I was working for this guy, and he was very masculine, you know, double masculine, TE, like probably like blast player, play blast. And I was just kind of like his helper dude or whatever. And he asked me to help organize his garage. And I was like going around organizing things. But as I was doing it, I was kind of just leaving things around like willy-nilly, wherever I desired, you know, just like momentarily. And he left. And so I thought he was gone. And so I put like a vacuum or whatever in the middle of the path. And then he comes like running in and like almost trips over this thing. And he's just like, why is this here in the middle of the thing, like in the way? And I'm like, oh, I'm sorry, man. Like, I didn't think you were coming back. And he's just like, you know what your problem is, Julien? I'm like, what did he say again? He said something along the lines like, you know what your problem is? You're like, you think too much about yourself, or like you're too selfish or something like that. And I was like taken aback. I was like,
yeah,
really? What the heck? And like, and to me, even to this day, I'm like, no, I wasn't. Like, you were gone, man. Like, I thought you were gone. But he's not wrong at the same time, you know. Like, if this is what he's picking up on, I can't dismiss that this is what he's picking up on. Like, he's probably a bit too far leaning. Like, he may have been lead TE, also a single decider, and he may have been seeing it a bit too much in me, a bit imbalanced. But he's not wrong as well, you know. Like, I probably am a bit too selfish in that regard when it comes to doing those things. And I just have to trust the math sometimes, right? It's a lot easier for me to say that I disagree with him or that, like, no, I'm not. Like, that's true. I wasn't thinking about him. I wasn't thinking about if he's going to run back in here. I was just thinking about how am I going to organize this garage or whatever.
You're thinking about the mission, you know?
Yeah. I should have more examples, but like.
So sometimes examples are hard. I ask this question every interview and almost nobody has examples. So maybe it's a bit harder to think about.
I think it is because I think we're inherently unconscious to our last function. And so Like you have a really conscious person if they're loaded with examples of like, oh yeah, like I did this and I did that.
Yeah.
And I was doing all these things. Like I only have one example because the guy just straight up said it to me, and you don't get that often. You don't often get people abrasive enough to just be like, you're selfish.
You know what your problem is, and nobody wants to hear that.
My problem.
It's like I already know what you're gonna say.
Yeah, right. Like, oh my god, what is this?
But I mean, yeah, to me, maybe from also the IP lens, it didn't sound that bad because you're making things convenient because you had the job to do and you didn't think he's gonna be back. Whatever, you leave a vacuum there. And when I was hearing you say that, I'm like, oh, okay. He tripped on the vacuum, got mad, and he looked for someone to blame it on, and that's what happened. But
yeah, no,
maybe this has been building up after a while, and finally
that's the thing, right? That's the thing, because if somebody says, you know what your problem is, that's not the only thing, right? That's not the only example. They must have like a backlog of things that
that's true. Yeah, that's very true.
I mean, I hated working for this guy. I quit pretty quickly after that, but
yeah.
I honestly wish I worked longer with him, just so that, I mean, it's a weird thing, but I kind of wish that I could be abused more in that situation, just to like
the feedback,
grow the scabs, you know, these scabs over of just like getting used to it, you know, and learning some more TE, because he was awesome at TE. Like he was a monster. He was like in construction, and he would do construction in seconds, and he counted the seconds too. He'd be like, every second counts, Julien. Like, don't you waste a second here. I'm like, you haven't even taught me anything, man. Like, teach me something and I'll help. And it's like,
if I ever a boss that says that every second counts, okay, you don't know how much time I waste. I'm getting
bruh, I'm out.
Well, I waste a lot of time, but yeah, it sounds like a pretty loaded up, maybe TESI guy or something like that.
It's something like that.
Tough thing to work for, but probably like a good learning experience. Not something that was probably sustainable, but something you could have definitely learned from.
I mean, I only lasted like a month. I kind of wish I did a bit longer, because I think that it's important. Like a bit of advice I would have for people of my own type, I think it's important to stick with jobs and situations that you really don't like just a little bit longer, you know? Just like get to that point where like I can't stand this any longer, and then go like one more month or like one more. And this doesn't apply to abusive relationships. Like get out if you're getting abused. But I'm just talking about like uncomfortable work situations, or like situations where it's like, I don't really like this, so I want to leave, but it's not really detrimental to your mental health or your physical health, you know?
Sure. Yeah. And that time you have time to process exactly what it is that's bothering you, because it might be something like very meta, right? And something you need to know about yourself. Or something that you struggle with, you know what I mean? Like, because it might not even be the job. It might be something that you're doing that's not necessary.
I think so, man. Yeah. I honestly, like, there's so many things in my life that I just stopped doing or didn't do because I thought, I don't like this, or I don't want to do this. And then I'm coming back around later on in life thinking like, wow, I really wish I stuck with that longer, or like I'm doing that again now with a different perspective of like, what I like that feeds my emotions not as important as what makes sense that interests me, you know? Trying to see more of the TI perspective. And this isn't necessarily TI, but Cal Newport or whatever, and he's saying like, find something that is interesting. It doesn't mean that you love it, doesn't mean you're passionate about it or you like it, but that it's interesting, that you're curious about, and then run with it, and that it's sensible, that it makes sense, it's pragmatic.
Totally. That is like the TI mindset, where you're kind of like searching for stuff that you don't necessarily like or dislike. It's more about, okay, what's going to update my software? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Did you play Mega Man as a kid? You know Mega Man?
Yeah.
So like the kind of the mindset I feel like I've had since I was a kid. And sorry for those of you who've heard this analogy. I feel like I've told this thing like a million times. But my viewpoint was like, when Mega Man, you would fight a boss, and the boss had some special power, right? And after you would kick the boss's ass, you would absorb that power, and then you could do that whenever you wanted, right? It was great.
Yeah.
And for me, that's like all of life's obstacles are like a boss in Mega Man, that once I kick that ass, then I have this thing to take with me, and I'm even more badass than I was before. And so I feel like that's kind of, I don't know if other TIs can relate to this, but that kind of feels like what you're doing a little bit as a TI.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense, but I never did that. I never thought about that when I was younger. Only very recently am I trying to change my perspective to think like, how can I upgrade myself through like tools, like what you're saying? Like, how can I get the upgrade that actually, was pragmatic, a practical upgrade, rather
But I
than
think you're
before it
still
was very
doing it.
nebulous.
I think
Sorry,
you're still
what?
doing it, just not with the goal in mind of doing, like being into music or doing music for a while. You're learning a lot of different skills and using your brain in a different way that you normally would.
Mhm.
And that is essentially upgrading your software, even though you're doing it because you like it, but you're getting the same result, like either way.
It's true. I think it is upgrading the software, just not in a pragmatic or practical way. It's very much just based on, well, what do I like? What gives me energy? What am I
Mm-hmm.
curious about right now? But I feel like I dropped things before it became practical, before I could have a practical tool out of that.
Mm-hmm.
Not to say that music isn't, like, music maybe is somewhat impractical, but to me, it's one of the most valuable things that I learned how to do, even if it's not a professional level. But even to have that as kind of like a hobby you can do whenever you want, that gives you refreshment, is great, man. I think everybody should have something like that.
Totally. Yeah, it's always like a journey. It's always some kind of adventure, or it always kind of marks a chapter in your life when you really take on something like that. If you think
Mm-hmm.
back to I don't know if you still do music or not, but think back to your jam sessions or when you first started, or the people you met along the way, or the things you found out that aren't even necessarily related to music that you found out about yourself while trying to do like the music and stuff. And that's like a whole nice like story that you now have because of that thing. And so like that's whenever I start something new, I try to think of it like that. Like look at the cool adventure I'm about to take part in. You know what I mean? Look where I'm going to be able to look back and see like, oh yeah, I remember those moments and everything. And so I think people that don't have like a hobby or start something new, I feel like there's no like judgment there or anything, but it's like, hey, you're kind of missing out, man. You ought to just pick something and fuck around with it. Like,
Yeah. What is it? I can't remember what Cal Newport calls them, but it's like this type of activity that is intrinsically valuable in of itself. And he describes it as being a buffer to life's inevitable ups and downs. And to me, that really
okay.
resonated, because it's like
Yeah.
this hobby that, your life can be falling to shit around you, but you can do this thing and it can give you joy in that moment, even if
Mhm.
you're surrounded by negativity and pain, right? It's a slight buffer. And yeah, exactly like what you're saying, though. No judgment for people who don't do that. I
Mhm.
mean, kudos. Like, I admire anybody who's done anything that I haven't done, or even who has done things that I have done. Like, I can find something to admire about almost anybody, because,
Definitely. Yeah.
like, I don't know how your brain works, but I feel like when I was younger, I would look for the flaws in other people, and I was really good at seeing other people's flaws. And as I got older, I started to see the flaws in myself, and I started
Mhm.
to see the positive in other people, and that almost became negative too, because I'd be like comparing myself and seeing only what's great about this other person and seeing only what's bad about myself. And I don't know, do you experience that at all? Do you do this contrasting
Um,
comparison thing?
yes, and more like how it was towards your later years. So like I was never
Mm-hmm.
good at seeing like us flaws in people that much. I'd like to, because sometimes that like puts me more at ease. You know what I mean? And makes me
Mm-hmm.
like the person more if like they got this thing, I got this thing going on. If they just seem like Mr. Perfect, then I'm just like I don't like
Yeah.
them. You know what I mean?
Nobody likes that person. Come on,
Yeah,
let's get
so
real.
it's like, but yeah, there definitely, yeah, is a comparison sometimes. And like, I think it's generally an IP thing, I think, where you kind of
Mm-hmm.
feel like everyone just has it together, and you see kind of the outline, which often looks pretty good on everyone because nobody's showing you the crazy shit. But you see
Yeah.
all your crazy shit. So you're comparing your crazy shit to everyone's nice, perfect outline.
Yeah,
And you
exactly.
kind of feel like, hey, I feel separated. I feel left out. I feel like I'm dealing with more than other people, which isn't necessarily true, because people are seeing your outline and they think, oh, what a cool person, what this and that, and blah blah
Mm-hmm.
blah, and they're looking at themselves thinking, well, fuck, like look at me.
I know it's shocking, right? Like, if anybody ever like would look at me as a positive aspect, I'm like, bro, I'm a piece of shit. Like, I don't know what you're talking about right here. And I say that in all good humor. Like, I don't
Yeah,
actually believe that, but you know what I'm saying.
yeah, totally. Yeah. And sometimes it's a surprise as an IP, right? It's surprise with good or bad, right? Like with the guy, like,
Mm-hmm.
your problem is, well, it's probably not a surprise if for an IP to be called selfish. Like, yeah, I am kind of selfish, but it is
Well,
still
it is if
it
you're
still
not
hurts.
like in the community of personality.
That's also
I
true.
would have
Yeah.
never considered myself selfish before being told that. And I
Ah,
think it
okay.
take years later to realize, like, yeah, maybe I am selfish. Like, I'm sure I am.
Yeah, totally. Then, oh shit, what else was I gonna say? Um, Oh, and it's also surprised to hear good stuff sometimes. Where you're like, oh, the tribe thinks
Mhm.
you're like this in a positive way. It's, really? No, me?
Yeah, I
Okay.
know, right? I cannot take a compliment, man. I got to go through some more like courses in taking compliments. It's like I just get
You
really
got to
weird.
come up with a compliment subroutine that you just like.
Yeah,
There's a thing
exactly
that
right.
comes out of your mouth and be like, "Oh, that's really nice of you. Thanks." Now that's might be complete
Yeah,
opposite of what's going on here.
yeah,
But it's
exactly.
better than be like, "Well, no, that's ugh. Okay, hold on there. No, well, I'm actually a piece of shit." Like, you can't do that because if
Yeah,
you think
no,
about it,
exactly.
like when somebody gives you a compliment, they want you to feel complimented by it. That's kind of part of what they get out of giving you it. So if you
Yeah,
reject that, then you're
absolutely.
kind of fucking them over too. You can't. You got to give them. They were able to make you feel better, and they're, you got to let them know that you appreciated it. I think instead of trying to be
Exactly.
like, this is my way
Yeah,
of
yeah,
going about it anyway. But
yeah.
yeah,
No, I totally agree with that. I think that that's something that I've been learning too in recent years is to just go with it, and just
Mhm.
however, maybe just do a little bow or
Thank you. Let me write you a thank you card.
yeah, exactly. I'll send you a bouquet of flowers.
The hard one is when you don't agree with the compliment. I don't know how to handle that. We're like, oh, you're really good at this. Be like, no, I'm not actually, but
Yeah,
thank you anyway. Like
I usually
that
just
I have a hard
laugh,
time.
man. I laugh and I'm like, really? That's what you think?
Yeah.
Thank you. That's
It's
great.
almost like, wait, are you fucking with me? Are you just saying shit? Because there's no way you think that. And you're like, I don't know how to navigate this. And then
Yeah,
those are tough.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, no, but thank you. That means good things.
Yeah.
I'm
I
grateful.
appreciate you attempting to give me a compliment. I don't agree with it, but I
But
appreciate
sometimes,
you.
sometimes I feel like they're projecting their own kind of values onto you. Like maybe they see something positive about you, and that they have
Mhm.
their own sort of idea of what positive is in a descriptor, and then they
Okay.
just throw that onto you, like kind of like like they
Okay.
think like being thoughtful is really important, and that's what they're honed in on, and they're like, you're a really thoughtful person, you know that, and you're like, well, not
You're like,
really,
oh,
but if that's a positive descriptor trait for you, then I accept that
yeah.
gladly.
It's like, I don't really see it that way, but okay. I'll
Mhm.
have to kind of step into the way you value stuff, which, I'm assuming,
Yeah,
but
I mean,
that
I'm
it's a
just
compliment that
throwing
you
out
value.
crap right here. Like this
Yeah.
is all made up, but it might be syntax too. Just how people verbalize and how they interpret words.
Could be. Yeah. True, true. And it's hard to know exactly what's going on. Wouldn't that be great? I feel like for the IP, or I feel like probably most IPs would love just a day in the life of somebody else, right?
Oh
Like
yeah,
especially for me with someone with FI, like what is going on with you guys? You know what I
oh
mean?
yeah,
How do you
true.
guys do it? Like what's going on in your head? How are you feeling? How do you see life? If I could have that just for a day, I feel like I would know so much. I would have so much to gain from that. Um,
I feel the same way about TI, to be honest. Like, I kind of almost hold out hope that I still am a TI. Like, I know that I'm not, but like there's parts of me in the back of my mind that I'm like, maybe they mistyped me. Maybe I'm actually TI. Maybe I'm the best type, you know. But but
yeah.
that's just kidding. There's no best type. But there are types with advantages at certain stages of life. There's no doubt about
True.
that.
And you tend to downplay your own types advantages sometimes too, right? Like I look at FIs and I think it's awesome, and that you guys like have that inner, like what to me feels like some sort of dynamo of energy and passion and all this stuff. Like you guys have like that FI as like your energy source, and you don't have to get that like from the tribe necessarily. Like that's just in you. You have that thing that drives you. Whereas TI is just kind of a lifeless, calculated machinery thing, and you don't really know what to use it on. You don't really. It's just it's there. It's cool, but it's not plugged into anything. That's what it feels like. When I look at FI, I feel like, okay, these people have a purpose and they have a pattern, they have a fire under them. You know what I mean? Which is probably I'm exaggerating things and looking at it a little too
It's
idealistically, but
exaggerated.
I think that's really cool though.
I think
That's what
that
I
some
feel
FIs have that. Like I've seen that in some FIs, and I admire
like.
that too because I do not feel
Mhm.
like I have that
Okay.
whatsoever. It
Okay.
feels like very sporadic bursts, Especially when I was younger, I felt like I could get really passionate about something and say like, "This is my passion," and talk about it to no end. And as I get older, it kind of fizzles down a little bit. Like there's always
Mhm.
the season of the month or whatever in which like I'm really interested or passionate about this, and that's the energy source. But That one thing, I don't know. And I don't even know if other FIs are experienced that or not, but it seems like it when you see somebody who's been in like a profession for a very long time and then they're FI and you think like that's their passion, that's their life, like that's what they do. And I'm like, how?
Yeah.
How are they doing?
Yeah. Same. I always want to jump to something else, or like you kind of like, wait, why am I doing this? Like, cool. Well, because I feel like a lot of it's like, I think a lot of it is this. So it's like a lot of what we do is about self-improvement, right? I think when you get to the point where it's not improving self, you're not really making that progress and you're not getting that progress goodie from it anymore because you've been in it so long, then you kind of like lose your purpose with it a little bit, right? Like then you're like, well, I'm not like getting the same thing from this anymore. Maybe it's time to jump to something else. You feel like that at all, or?
I do, but I also feel like kind of confused about certain things too. Like I try to frame this in a more understandable way.
Okay.
But it's like I definitely experience what you're talking about, especially like going to the gym and like you're knowing like I'm improving my body right now. And every time you go to the gym, like you can see yourself, you lift more weights, you look more muscular, you get more lean, and you feel like this is like progress, and you can see it so clearly. But for someone like me as well, like I'll take time off from the gym because there's something else I'm interested in, or maybe I just don't have access to a gym, or I'm too tired at the time. And then I'll go back to the gym. And every time I go back to the gym, it's almost like the excitement that I once had before going to the gym is less than it was, even if I had fallen back to a stage where I was similarly, and I can improve just as much as I could have improved back then. The passion is just not as much as it once was. And I find myself cycling through these things. And then the NI is kind of like trying to categorize everything into same boxes. And so when I embark on something new, I'm almost already connecting that to some other failed, not necessarily failed, but in my mind, failed thing that I had done in the past. And already it's almost like a half-baked thing because like I'm almost expecting it to fail or repeat the failure that I once experienced in the past.
Gonna have the same pattern as the last thing, the same fate, maybe.
Exactly, and that's a belief that's unfounded, because the reason why it didn't work out is because like I gave up, basically. Essentially I just gave up, and that doesn't need to happen, but it feels like every time you go through this cycle, at least for my NI brain, it's like I'm going to repeat this pattern, and like this pattern is just like I just see it repeating.
And that's tough because like the only way you break out of that is to kind of ignore that and to see it break before your own eyes, and then you're like, oh wait, okay, it doesn't have to be this way. I just broke the pattern. Yeah, I feel that too. Like, yeah, you just feel like, well, this happens every time. Why would it be different? And then the last time, and then somehow you stick with it for whatever reason, and then it turns out different. You're like, oh, thank God. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Finally or whatever,
Finally, yeah. I mean, I think I need to, and we need to remind ourselves that we are progressing, in a very sort of nebulous way. It might not be that we're progressing in a single path if we jump past, like I have. Like I've worked way too many jobs, have no schooling credentials, but built up all these really vague skills to like a moderate degree. And it's like, even if this doesn't really amount to any tower or whatever, like the progress is still upward, we're still spiraling upward in our progression of life. And I feel like I'm trying to take more of a TI approach. Like that's my solution to break into the pattern, is to ignore the feelings more in favor of what makes sense, what's pragmatic, what's logical, and being like, I'm not going to give up because I don't feel like it anymore. I'm going to try to do what makes sense in my circumstances. Right. And that's kind of foreign territory.
Yeah. And that's hard. I mean, even like, TI people have the thing where it's like, well, we're just doing what's pragmatic, where it's like, well, it's actually still it's still rooted in emotions as well. The only difference is like a lot of times you get good emotions and liking stuff because it's pragmatic. So it's taking a second step, I guess. So sometimes, but still it's hard to find that stuff. For me, it's like, I don't know. I never try to bore through or power through anything because I've just learned that just drains the fuck out of me and it's not going to work. And so I try to use the TI to just make things easier and try to make, instead of like working harder, I'm just trying very, very hard, or not very hard, not too hard because that's hard work again, but trying to work smart. Right? You know what I mean? Like I have a whole thing when I'm learning a new skill now where I'm like, okay, I spend 5 minutes on it. That's it.
Yeah, exactly right.
If I spend more than 5 minutes, great. I'm just going to every day mark off on something physical that I've done it. and let it snowball over time on its own. And I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to push myself. I don't have to use discipline or willpower because that shit sucks anyway. And so what I mean? So I think
100%.
you TI your way into making things easier instead of like TI and we're like, oh, I need to stick with it. I need to have discipline because I feel like that's just a losing battle. At least for my lazy ass, that's a losing battle.
No, man, I totally agree. Like, I almost feel like there's a mental barrier to starting things, and you can overcome that mental barrier by just committing to the start and to be like I was I mean, I'm bad at this too because like that's a habit, right? And I haven't been great at habits recently because I've had a lot of restructuring in my life lately, a lot of tumultuous times, and which is just an excuse. Like, you can do habits whenever, but I guess we also have to be gentle with ourselves at times, and that's what I'm doing.
Totally, yeah.
And I was writing a book. I was editing a book that I wrote ages ago because I really wanted to just finish it because I put it down and picked it up and put it down so many times. And how I got myself to do it because I was so drained. Like, I don't want to even look at this book anymore from my mind's point of view, you know.
Yeah.
But the thing is, that's the idea of it. But if I actually sit down and I said to myself, like, all I have to do is write one sentence, and I would sit down and I would write one sentence, and then that one sentence would turn into a paragraph and sometimes a page, and I would actually enjoy it. And the thing is, like, once you're in the process of it, a lot of times you do enjoy it, but it's like the idea of it and going too far into it that burns us out. At least that's how I've experienced it.
Totally. Yeah, totally. Yeah, the whole weight of the entire project is there.
Did you hear that?
Is that you or me? What's going? What is that noise?
That was just a motorcycle outside.
Oh, okay. It sounded like somebody's voice or something. I'm like, what the hell is that? But yeah, it's whenever you like I can relate to that in terms of like song stuff. Like, I've like written a song and then like I need to mix it or there's some finishing touches and I'm like, I don't even want to hear this thing again. I've heard it a million times now. But if I see it as like the whole project, it's going to be a mountain. But I have to go, okay, let me just adjust the fader on the kick drum and that'll be all.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you kind of get into it. So yeah, that's a good trick for sure.
Yeah, man. Yeah, that's something that I still want to set up is like an audio, like a little mini studio. Like, I have not gathered enough of the things to do that, but that is a goal in the future, man. Just to have that, because it's so much fun if you have.
Totally.
I have this friend who his friend had this basement that was just full of instruments and microphones and just like had everything, and you can just go in there and just start recording a jam, and it's awesome, right? But I'm like, like, all I got is a microphone and like a crappy audio interface, and that's it, you know.
Just step by step, brick by brick, one little thing here and there, and next thing you know, you got something amazing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, let me throw you one more question before we head out here. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but yeah, overall, how do you feel like OP's helped you? Has it helped you? Has it made a big impact? What are the things you're kind of seeing in yourself since you've been, along for the ride?
I think OP has definitely helped me, and I think that it's helped me just reframe my addictions to certain behavior, my behavioral addictions that aren't actual addictions. I mean, sometimes they are, but the FI, wanting to just do things that I enjoy, right? And reframing that I should do something that's more pragmatic instead, right? And also just observing myself when I'm being too selfish or I'm going too far into the sleep consume, putting myself out there more often, things like that. And I think that's just helped, just getting a better idea of who I am and seeing what I'm not doing and what I'm overdoing. And I can't always see that, but the small bits that I do see help me, I think, align myself to be more balanced in general, right? Sure. And I think balance is the one thing that's helped me the most through this journey. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. It gives you a way to like kind of classify things as well. And somehow when you're able, you have language and you have a way of like almost kind of putting things in a box, it helps you to see it more clear and come up with a way to fix it, right?
Exactly. I totally agree. Yeah. You can encapsulate it into a concept. And when you have the concept, you can kind of quantify it into something you can observe, right?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, let me just check the chat for questions real quick. I don't think we had any questions, but I might have missed something here. I don't want to leave anyone behind.
Right. Yeah.
I'll let you go. Okay, you answered that question. I think mostly just comments.
That's okay. I'll just call back. Thank you. That's okay. I want to order groceries. How much longer are you gonna be?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Wait, you asked a question, Cosmic? Wait, he answered it though. Was the one like in the chat, or was there? Did I miss it?
I think we kind of answered the question. What were you like when you were immature? That could mean when we were
Oh, I didn't see
younger,
that one actually.
but before you felt as mature, capable of dealing with it. I think we kind of went into it a little bit. I was mostly saying that when I was more immature, I felt like I got upset over everything. You know, like I would get upset over if some like I broke an item. You know, like if I broke an object, I would get upset over it on the observer spectrum, and I would get upset if somebody insulted me, even if they didn't even mean it as an insult. You know, like if I understood it as an insult, then I would just get upset over any little thing. You know, and I think that that's something that's smoothed over time to be more mature. And when I was immature, I was a lot more prone to explosive anger outbursts. You know, like now I'm so calm, I'm so chilled out. But back when I was a teenager, especially, you know, like I was a lot angrier, and I think that's yeah, that's what I was like when I was more immature. How about you, Dave?
I was just kind of a dick. I don't know. Like I feel like I just I made fun of everything. Everything like was a joke, and
Yeah, me too, man.
everything could be criticized and made fun of, including teachers and figures of authority who usually did not appreciate that. And yeah, being really insulting without trying to be, you know, a lot of times just pointing stuff out that maybe somebody doesn't want to have pointed out about them. You know, yeah, just like a very, very demon in me. I don't understand that this is going to hurt your feelings like that. Had no idea about any of that feeling stuff. I knew when my feelings got hurt and I would get really upset and I'd get pissed off, but didn't understand that I was doing that to other people, you know. So I feel like that was me as immature, just a giant smartass. That was how you characterize my I would say, which is probably what you'd expect from.
Yeah,
from
I can honestly, I relate to that though too. I was very cynical.
Okay.
I was kind of not so much as like just insulting people and not understanding that I was insulting people, but I would insult people, especially if I felt like I was defending an FI value, you know, and I would gladly insult someone over that. And I was just cynical about everything. I didn't really even have well-formed values. I didn't care about anything, you know. I didn't care if the world would burn down, you know. It was just destructive.
It's time to develop that. That makes sense. Okay, there's one more question, and I don't know where this, what's behind this question, but does Julien like Avril Lavigne?
I think she's all right. I'm not a fan or anything. I haven't really listened to much of her music, but I jam out if she came on. You know, I'm not opposed to Avril Lavigne. I had friends who were a lot more into her, but not my go-to music, but definitely something that I'm fine to listen to.
She like your type tweet or something? Why is this being asked? I wonder.
I imagine there's a connection between FI and Avril Lavigne. Okay. Like maybe Avril Lavigne encapsulates
FI people know
FI.
that. It's in everyone's FI. The FE math says it's in everyone's FI.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And if you don't like it, then you're not FI. So
exactly.
That's it.
Right.
No, she's
thanks
pretty solid,
everyone for. Oh, sorry. What did you say?
No,
like I cut you off.
I'm not saying anything.
Okay. Well, thanks everyone that tuned in. I saw some old faces today that I hadn't seen in a while. So yeah, thank you. And for the new faces as well. It was great to have you on here. Thanks for participating. Thanks for watching. It means a big deal to me. And yeah, I hope y'all have a good one. Feel free to leave some comments if you have some more questions for Julien or for me or about anything at all. And I will most likely get back to you. All right. Great, y'all. Have a good one, and we'll see you on the next episode of Growth Talk.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thanks for having me, man. See you, everybody.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, Julien.